Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to take a first look at the Week 8 NFL slate on Draftkings and Yahoo. Go through each position, build out a first look lineup for this Week 8 slate. Obviously, this is not a lineup that I'm going to be playing. I'm not out here to give lineups. That's not why I make these videos. Honestly, I hope if you play the lineup that you lose, because I don't encourage playing lineups, that you find on the internet. I would highly suggest you all make your own lineups. But I do want to, just build out a lineup, talk through roster construction, what I see early on in the week. Just guys that stand out to me early on in the week. Haven't really done any research. These will just be players that stand out maybe based on matchup, based on price tag. Maybe, they're getting increased opportunity based on injuries. That is one thing that's going to be pretty big for this Week 8 slate is the injuries. Like, there's a ton of injuries, guys questionable that we'll need to keep an eye on heading up to Friday. We'll definitely talk, more about that in Friday's video when we have more information. I'm recording this video on Tuesday night, so there's still a lot of question marks, a lot of things up in the air for this Week 8 slate. So before we do get started, guys, as always, I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button down below. And if you're new to the channel, if you are new here, be sure to click that subscribe button as well. Click the notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload and you'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you would like to get more content from me, if you enjoy these YouTube videos and you want to see more that I have to offer, you can check out the Patreon, link down below in the description, and see all that I do have to offer over on Patreon. But let's go ahead and take a look at quarterback for this week. For this first look lineup, I do normally base it, kind of like cash game based. Guys that, stand out maybe based on volume, price tag, matchup, like I said earlier. Normally I'm looking to pay down at quarterback in cash games. I think this is going to be a week where paying down makes plenty of sense. There's some guys in good spots, at the top, like Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson. These are guys you could always pay up for. But there are some question marks with these top guys, like Patrick Mahomes. It's a fantastic matchup against the Jets, but I'm definitely concerned with them being such heavy favorites. I mean, the Chiefs are favored by like 3 touchdowns. There is a legit shot that Patrick Mahomes doesn't play in the fourth quarter because the Chiefs are up so much. I have some question marks with him, and he's also very expensive, $8,100. It's going to be really tough to get to him in cash games this week, I have a feeling, unless we just get a lot of value, which, was kind of the case last week. We got a lot of really good value. Jamal Williams, Gio Bernard, Traquan Smith. You had some cheap tight ends that were in play. It did allow you to pay up at quarterback. I don't think that's going to be the case this week, though. So, the top options probably will be more for tournaments. Sure, Russ Wilson, Mahomes, these guys are great plays every week, but I have some concerns. Aaron Rodgers, I would say, is probably in the best spot out of all the expensive guys. He gets to face the Vikings at home. This was a team that he just torched earlier this season in Week 1, had 33, I believe, 33 Draftkings points against the Vikings in Week 1. This game has one of the higher totals on the slate, 54.5. It's actually tied with the Bengals-Titans game. 54.5 right now leads the slate in total. So really good game environment, really good matchup for Aaron Rodgers. But, do I want to pay $7,600 for Aaron Rodgers in cash games? Probably not. Lamar Jackson, he's been mediocre at best this season, at least for fantasy. He hasn't been the elite fantasy QB that we've seen or that we saw last year. Still, I always have interest in Lamar Jackson, especially with him, being priced down, cheaper than guys like Mahomes and Wilson and Rodgers. You could definitely look to Lamar Jackson. It is a tough matchup against the Steelers, but once again, I don't think I'm going to be able to pay up at quarterback this week, at least not in cash, unless we get a lot of value throughout the week. So let's talk about some of these cheaper options. Joe Burrow at 6,200, I do have interest in. He stands out to me early on in the week. He's just getting so much volume in terms of pass attempts. Threw the ball 47 times last week against Cleveland, 39 times against the Colts. This Bengals team is pretty bad on the defensive end. They don't really, their defense kind of struggles. They, get down most times. They're probably going to be down again this week. Even at home, I believe they're 6-point dogs right now. So this is another spot where you would expect Burrow to probably have to throw the ball 40 to 45 times. This Tennessee team is definitely easier to throw on than run on. So I do like Joe Burrow at 6,200. I think there is, plenty of upside for him to get the 300-yard bonus and to get multiple touchdowns. I think in the 6K range, he looks really, really good. I think under 6K, there are some potential values. Tua making his, season debut. We'll have to see how he plays. Against the Rams, that's not a matchup that I love, but I'm definitely excited to see how Tua plays. I don't know if I'm going to be playing him in DFS, but he's going to be a guy that I'm going to be pretty high on rest of the season. This might be a week, though, where I kind of, just avoid him, just kind of wait and see. But Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, these are two guys I do want to talk about for cheap. So Derek Carr, 5,500, this is a guy that I don't think I really ever play in DFS. I haven't played him at all this season. I barely played him last year. But he's actually been pretty good for fantasy just so far this season. Through 6 games, he has, I believe 4 of his 6 games have been over 20 DraftKings points. And the 2 games where he didn't get over 20, one of them was kind of a tough matchup against New England. The other one, Josh Jacobs just kind of went nuclear against the Panthers and got all the touchdowns. So Carr didn't have the good of a game there. But this is a really good matchup for him this week against Cleveland. This Cleveland team is definitely much easier to throw on than run on. They've been pretty good against the run, but they are definitely a team you can beat through the air. 5,500 for Derek Carr in a very high total game. Right now, this game has a 53.5 total. This this Browns Raiders game was one of the games that really stood out to me that, I saw there were a lot of plays that I like on both sides. There's multiple guys from the Raiders that I'm interested in, multiple guys from the Browns that I'm interested in, especially with, Odell out now. That's going to open up some more volume for guys like Jarvis Landry, for Rashad Higgins. Austin Hooper may be out again, so we can maybe go back to David Njoku, go back to Harrison Bryant. There's just a lot of plays. Obviously, Kareem Hunt as well is in a great spot. I like Derek Carr quite a bit at 5,500. I like, the matchup. I like the fact that Cleveland is so good against the run. I don't think this is going to be a spot where we see Josh Jacobs really, kind of go for 100 yards and multiple touchdowns. I think this is going to be a spot where maybe Josh Jacobs struggles a little bit. Maybe he's not very efficient, and we see Derek Carr, kind of have to beat this Cleveland team through the air. So I do like Carr for 5,500. And Jimmy G against the Seahawks. Jimmy G, another guy that I don't really enjoy playing. Rarely do I play him in DFS. This is a very, run-heavy team. But this is a spot where you expect the 49ers are probably going to have to pass a little bit more. Right now they're dogs in this game to Seattle. We know Seattle has an incredibly good offense. They are going to put up points even against this 49ers defense. I don't think this is going to be a spot where you see San Francisco get up early and then just run the ball. They're going to have to throw in this game. This Seattle team is incredibly easy to throw on. They've been pretty much one of the worst pass defenses so far this year. Really just taking quarterbacks against Seattle has been pretty profitable so far. So for 5,400, I definitely have interest in Jimmy Garoppolo as well. But I think between the two, I do prefer Derek Carr right now, especially, when you look at his stacking options. I really like this spot for Darren Waller. Nelson Aguilar has been trending up. You could maybe look to him as well. I think I'm going to roll with Derek Carr at 5,500. I don't mind either guy, but right now I'll just go ahead and plug in Carr at 5,500 as our, sort of our cheap quarterback to start off the week. There's other guys I talked about like, Joe Burrow, Jimmy G, obviously, even in the 6K range, Justin Herbert's been amazing, but now he's up to 6,900. I don't know if I really want to pay that price for him in cash games. Probably would just rather get up to the 7K guys. If a lot of value opens up and I can pay up at quarterback, I really like Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers and even Lamar. But right now we don't have that great value, so we'll just kind of have to wait and see. I'll have more in-depth thoughts on Friday when I'm able to make my full breakdown. Once we get more news, guys go through practice, or maybe guys wind up sitting out practice, and we get more clarity on injury status. But moving over to Yahoo, I think it's kind of the same thing. The pricing is very similar over there. Russ, Mahomes, Rodgers, these are your top expensive quarterbacks. We'll note that Lamar Jackson's only $34. I really like that price tag on him. I think if I can find a way to get up to him in my cash game lineup, my main lineup, I might try and do that for $34. But Derek Carr is also very cheap on Yahoo. He's only $28. Joe Burrow, note, $27. You could definitely play Joe Burrow. Jimmy G also cheap at $26. Those are the 3 guys I like for cheap. We'll just go ahead and plug in Derek Carr since we went with him on Draftkings, like him on Yahoo as well as a cheap QB option. Before we move on to running back, I do want to just go ahead and plug in a cheap defense. Normally I don't look too in depth in terms of defense. Even when it comes to making my lineups, defense is just not a spot where I get too in depth. I'll just really play whatever defense fits. If I really like my lineup and I have 2,100 left, I don't mind plugging in the Bengals defense. For now, we'll just look for a cheap home defense. I think, the Dolphins at home against the Rams, Jared Goff, a quarterback that will take sacks, will turn the ball over. The Dolphins defense has been a little bit better this year. I don't mind plugging in the Dolphins D as just our placeholder for now. And if we have salary, we could maybe upgrade. But I'm fine plugging them in at 2,400. And then on Yahoo, the pricing is kind of similar. We'll note that the Bills defense is really cheap over there, and I do like the Bills defense quite a bit at home against the Patriots. I mean, the Patriots offensively have just been really bad this season. Cam Newton last week looked really bad against the 49ers. I believe he threw like 3 interceptions, got benched late in the game. Like this New England team, they're not doing anything offensively. They're really struggling. I think this could be a spot where we definitely see the Bills force some turnovers, maybe get some interceptions, get some sacks. $13. We'll plug them in as our cheap defense over on Yahoo. But at running back, go ahead and look it over here. Normally, this is always a position I do like to pay up at, and I think that is once again going to be the case this week, especially for cash games. I really like some of these top-tier running backs. Right now, in my opinion, Alvin Kamara, I think, is one of the safest running backs on the board week in and week out, especially on Draftkings with the full PPR scoring. We'll have to keep an eye on the status of Michael Thomas. That is one of the question marks we're going to have to, keep an eye on heading into Sunday. He's been injured. There's also been, trade rumors going around that he could be traded. If he winds up out, that's just going to make me like Kamara even more because his usage in the passing game will just skyrocket with Michael Thomas out. Last week, Kamara just kind of had a mediocre game, and he still gave us 22 DraftKings points, 14 carries for 83 yards, 8 catches for 65 yards. I mean, his floor is just so high. In terms of cash games, we're looking for that guy that, even if he doesn't get a touchdown, can still give us 20 DraftKings points. And for me, that's Alvin Kamara right now. He's not touchdown dependent. He can get us there, even without scoring. And if he does get into the end zone, once or twice, I mean, you're looking at a 30, 35-point game from Alvin Kamara. I know the matchup isn't great against the Bears, but this is a guy that's pretty much matchup proof for me. Just gets so much usage in the passing game. Gonna get 10 to 15 carries as well. He's one of the most efficient running backs in the league. He's the guy that I'm trying to pay up for this week. Most likely gonna be in my main lineup. Obviously nothing's set in stone. It's early on in the week, but especially if Michael Thomas is out again, Kamara is gonna be a guy that I want to try and pay up for. I like him a lot over on Yahoo as well. I do prefer him over Derrick Henry. I know it's a really good matchup for Derrick Henry, and he should run all over this Bengals team. But Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara are definitely two different kinds of players. Like Alvin Kamara last week, no touchdown, still gave us 23 DraftKings points. Derrick Henry, he's going to need to score multiple touchdowns to really give you that 25, 30-point game because he doesn't get much usage in the passing game. At most, he's going to catch maybe 1 to 2 passes, whereas Kamara can get us, 8 to 10 points alone just on receptions because he can catch, 8 to 10 balls. Henry needs to go for 150 yards and multiple touchdowns to really give us that, 25, 30-point game, whereas Kamara can get 25 points without scoring at all. So even in a good matchup, Derrick Henry probably going to be a guy that I, don't really pay up for. He's rarely a guy that I do try and jam in at the top, especially when you have like Kamara on the slate. Kamara's just, in my opinion, he's one of the safest running backs on the board right now. He's the guy that I do prefer, even in a tougher matchup. I prefer Kamara over Derrick Henry. Dalvin Cook, I'm a big fan of. First game back from injury, though, I guess there could be some question marks there, but he should do really well against Green Bay. They have really struggled to stop the run this season. On the other side of that game, assuming Aaron Jones plays, it'll be his first game back from injury, but really good matchup for him against Minnesota. Minnesota hasn't been able to slow anyone down this season on the run, through the air. It hasn't really mattered. The Vikings defense has just been so bad. I think we're going to see a lot of points scored in that Minnesota-Green Bay game. So both running backs from that game look interesting. There are obviously question marks, though, there, so we'll have to watch that throughout the week. I prefer Kareem Hunt, though, for a little bit cheaper. I really like this spot for Kareem Hunt against the Raiders. The Raiders have definitely been a team you want to attack through the ground. They have really struggled to stop the run. Been one of the worst teams so far against the run, I believe, in terms of yardage. They're only middle of the pack, but I'm pretty sure in terms of DVOA, they're towards the bottom of the league in run DVOA. Really easy team to run on. Kareem Hunt right now is just getting massive usage. Nick Chubb's still going to be out most likely. I believe Chubb's most likely going to return. I think they have a bye week in week 9, so he'll most likely return in week 10. So we're going to get Kareem Hunt with monster usage for at least one more week. Last week got 21 touches, played 80% or 90% of the snaps. I mean, he was pretty much a workhorse back, and that should once again be the case this week. And Kareem Hunt's another one of those guys that gets really good usage in the passing game. I don't know if he's going to get 10 targets like Alvin Kamara will, but Kareem Hunt's probably going to get anywhere from 15 to 20 carries, 4 to 5 targets. He's only 6,900. It's a great matchup at home against a Raiders defense that has really struggled to stop the run this year. really all the boxes are checked for Kareem Hunt. So I like him a lot as well. 6,900 on DK, $30 on Yahoo. I like that price over on Yahoo as well. He's definitely one of those guys that does stand out in the mid-range. And then, Jonathan Taylor against the Lions, he's starting to kind of take away, or he's starting to kind of, separate himself from Nyheim Hines and Jordan Wilkins. Like, he's been kind of a workhorse back, 16 touches last week, should get the carries, especially if they are up in this game, which they should be against a pretty bad Lions team. I mean, this is another team that really struggles to stop the run. The Lions have been so bad against the run this year. Really good spot for Jonathan Taylor. I wouldn't mind going with him, maybe in the flex, but I think we are going to have to save some salary, and there could definitely be some value at running back this week that we will talk about. But like Joe Mixon, he was out last week. If he's out again, we can maybe go to Gio Bernard, but his price tag did come up to $5,800 after being, $4,400 or $4,500 last week. So I don't know if we're going to go to him since his price came up. Same with Jamal Williams, Jamal Williams, $6,100. He was like a stone lock last week once Aaron Jones got ruled out. He was only $4K, but now that he's $6,100, even if Aaron Jones is out, are we going to want to pay $6,100 for Jamal Williams? Probably not. I think Dalvin Cook's going to be back this week, but if something were to go bad there and he were to be out again, Alexander Madison's up to $6K. Well, he was $7,200 the week before, so maybe Madison at $6K could be viable. But like in this $5K range, this San Francisco-Seattle game is one we're going to want to watch in terms of running backs. So I'll go ahead and pull up the running backs from both teams so I can show you guys. So Raheem Mostert on IR, most likely going to be out, or is going to be out for this game. Jeff Wilson got hurt last week. It looks like he is most likely going to be out as well. Tevin Coleman, I don't think he's going to be returning for this game. It looks like they're hoping they're going to get him back from injury reserve, so that'll be something to monitor. But let's just say Mostert and Wilson, which I think both those guys are going to be out. Let's say Coleman is out as well. That really only leaves Jerick McKinnon and JaMychal Hasty as the two healthy running backs for San Francisco, the guys that they'll actually use. If we get a scenario where Mostert, Wilson, and Coleman are all out, I think McKinnon and Hasty both would become viable. I think I would prefer Hasty because he looked really good last week. Jerick McKinnon barely played, but they did come out and say they were planning on resting McKinnon. It's kind of weird that they said that after the game. Like, I don't know why they would wait to tell that after the game, but McKinnon barely played last week. He was pretty much like a healthy scratch. I think he actually got like one touch, but that was really it. Or he got 3 carries for -1 yard, so he barely played last week. Hasty looked really good, though, in limited touches. 9 carries for 57 yards, 1 catch for 16 yards. If all 3 of those running backs were to be out, I think JaMychal Hasty at $5K would become viable as a cheap value. And then on the other side, Seattle is definitely going to be a team we have to watch. So if you look already, their top 3 running backs are all questionable. Chris Carson, Carlos Hyde, and Travis Homer, all dealing with injuries right now. Chris Carson most likely going to be out. It came out and said that he's going to be week to week, so I'm assuming that Carson does not play this week. Carlos Hyde also questionable, dealing with a hamstring injury. I think he had to come out of that Sunday night game a little bit early because of the injury, so his status is up in the air. Travis Homer also has a knee contusion. His status is up in the air. I mean, if all 3 of these guys are out, DJ Dallas will be a stone lock at $4K. Like, he's going to be their last healthy running back. I'm going to go ahead and plug him in for now as a cheap value, just because I think Carson is most likely going to be out. I think Hyde is there's definitely some question marks there. So as long as Carson and Hyde are both out, if it's just Homer and Dallas, whichever one, they're both $4K. I'd probably prefer the starter. I would assume that, we get some clarity on that throughout the week. If Hyde and Carson both wind up out, we'll probably get word on who's going to be the starter and get the lion's share of the carries. But Travis Homer is also dealing with injury, so we don't know if he's going to play. I'm going to like DJ Dallas a lot at $4K just as a cheap value if, those injuries break the way I would want them to. So I'm going to plug him in for now. He's minimum salary on both sides, $4K on Draftkings, $10 on Yahoo. Going to really, really like him as a value play. He's kind of going to be like the Jamal Williams play of last week where, if all these guys are out and he's like the last healthy guy, I mean, he's going to be locked in for probably close to 20 touches. And I think he's shown, when he gets playing time, he can be efficient, can get usage in the passing game. They have used him in the passing game a little bit this season. Did get 2 receptions last week, 2 receptions against Miami. He doesn't really play much, but the opportunity is most likely going to be there this week with all the injuries to the Seattle backfield. So that's going to be something we have to monitor throughout the week. Just as I'm recording this video Tuesday night, I'm assuming at least one of those three, if not, maybe Hyde and Carson will be out this week. Carson for sure I'm assuming is going to be out, but it just comes down to Hyde and Homer. If those guys wind up out, then we can definitely lock in DJ Dallas. But yeah, that's kind of the big thing we'll have to watch throughout the week heading up to, Sunday. Obviously, when I make my full breakdown on Friday, we'll have more information, so we'll be able to touch on that more in Friday's video. But let's go ahead and move on to receiver now. So obviously in this lineup, we're probably not going to be able to pay up at receiver. Normally in cash games, I'm not jamming in expensive receivers. Last week, though, was a week where it was pretty easy to get in expensive receivers in cash because we had, Jamal Williams as a value play. We had Gio Bernard as a value play. You had some viable cheap receivers. Traquan Smith I thought was viable for cash. If you wanted to go cheap at tight end, you had like Harrison Bryant, David Njoku were both viable. So that was a week where you could kind of pay up. I don't know if that's going to be the case this week. Devontae Adams is coming off a monster game, but his price is up to $8,800. It's a really good matchup, and he could obviously go out there and smash once again. I just don't think I'm going to be able to pay $8,800 for Devontae Adams in cash. I'd rather save salary and play Kamara. I'd rather play, some of those other running backs we talked about. Sure, you could play Adams, but more of a tournament option. Don't think I'm going to look to go there in cash games. Probably won't be paying up for receiver in cash games. So we're definitely going to have to look to this mid-range and look for some value. So in the 6K range, one of the guys that stood out to me early on in the week was Keenan Allen. I don't know what DraftKings is doing, but Keenan Allen should not be $6,200. This guy's locked in for double-digit targets every week, it seems like. Got 13 last week against Jacksonville. 10 catches for 125 yards, over 25 DraftKings points. He's another one of those guys that is not touchdown dependent. He can go out there and get 10 double-digit catches, over 100 yards, give you 20-plus DraftKings points, and be a good play at his price tag. This is obviously not the best spot against Denver, going on the road to face a Denver defense that is solid. They do play well at home. Their defense seems to play a little bit better at home. Pretty low total as well, not the best game environment, so I don't really see myself stacking up this game. But $6,200 for Keenan Allen, that's just too cheap of a price tag in my opinion. He really looks good in that 6K range. One of the guys that stood out to me early on in the week, and his price tag on Yahoo is also really nice, just $22. He was $22 last week, so his price barely came up. I think he was $22. No, he was $21, so he went up $1. Still a really good play over there in my opinion. Definitely like Keenan Allen. In that 6K range. There's some other guys that are viable in that range as well. Tyler Boyd's been playing really well. Tyreek Hill still feels a little bit too cheap, but I really like that price on Keenan Allen. I think $6,200, just too low for him. And then moving down to the 5K range, I do want to talk about Brandon Ayuk. So the San Francisco, we talked about their backfield, how they're dealing with injuries with their running backs. Well, they're also dealing with injuries to their receivers. We'll pull them up real quick. Deebo Samuel, really the one, we need to talk about. So he is most likely going to be out for this game. They've already come out and said that he is not expected to play and will most likely miss, more games after that. So Brandon Ayuk is probably going to operate as the number one receiver for San Francisco. George Kittle is technically their, number one receiver, but he's a tight end. I'm assuming, though, that Ayuk's going to be the wide receiver 1 and that Kendrick Bourne is going to be the wide receiver 2. And then I don't know who they're really going to involve after that. Maybe they involve Trent Taylor. Maybe they involve Dante Pettis. But I think Pettis, he's kind of been a healthy scratch recently. He's barely even played. Really, the guys we're going to want to target from San Fran are Ayuk, Bourne, and Kittle. Ayuk at $5,800, I do actually like quite a bit. I know his price tag came up a lot, but this is a guy that has shown upside and plenty of big playability when he gets the ball in his hands. Had that really crazy touchdown against I can't remember if it was against New England or against the Rams where he hurdled over a defender. It might have been against New England, or maybe it wasn't a touchdown, but I think it was against New England where he hurdled over a defender. Just crazy play. Had a big game in that game. 6 catches, 115 yards, 20 DraftKings points. For $5,800, that's expensive price tag, but against the Seattle defense that has not been able to stop anyone through the air, we saw Christian Kirk have a really good game against them Sunday night. DeAndre Hopkins also had a really good game. This Seattle team is definitely one we want to attack through the air. We want to take quarterbacks against Seattle. We want to take receivers against them. Ayuk should be locked in for more target volume with no Deebo Samuel. I think we most likely see 8 to 10 targets for him, potentially more if the 49ers are playing from behind and have to throw. I like him a lot at $5,800. I think with the price coming up, people might be scared away from him, but he's still a really good play in my opinion, especially in this good matchup. And then, looking at Yahoo's pricing, he's also pretty affordable over there. Coming in at $22, I believe he's the same price tag as Keenan Allen. If I'm not mistaken, I thought I saw Ayuk. Yeah, he's $22, so we can definitely look to him over on Yahoo as well. Very affordable over there. Pretty easy to get in, just given, the soft pricing on Yahoo. I talk about that every week. It's very easy to build, really good lineups on Yahoo given their pricing. So I do like Ayuk over there as well. I think it's a very strong play, especially if Samuel winds up out, which is most likely going to be the case. And then for our last few spots, we'll go ahead and move on to tight end real quick. We'll talk about tight end before we fill out that last receiver spot. So tight end is a position where I see one clear play at the top that I really like. George Kittle is expensive, and I think he's an awesome play this week if you can fit him in. But it is going to be pretty tough to do so. He is $7K. That's a lot to spend for a tight end. I think I would rather save some salary and maybe play a guy like Darren Waller. I mean, Darren Waller has really been as consistent as it gets this season. He had one bad game against New England. I'm not really, factoring too much into that, though. That was a really tough matchup. You take out that matchup, and he's had double-digit Draftkings points in every game so far. Scored a touchdown last week, scored a touchdown the week before that. Another game that, or another matchup, great game environment for Darren Waller, a really good matchup, I should say. I mean, this Cleveland team has always really struggled to defend tight ends, and that's kind of been the case again this season. We talked about it earlier, a great game environment, high total, 53.5 total, close 2.5-point spread. I mean, I wish he was a little bit cheaper, but, he was 6,100 last week, and he came down to 5,600. I think Darren Waller looks like a really good play if you can pay up at tight end, and we got $5,500 remaining per player for our last two spots, so we definitely have the salary to get in Waller. I'll go ahead and plug him in on DraftKings, and I do like him on Yahoo as well. I think if you can find $5 to get up to Kittle, that's sure you could go that route as well, but we only have $35 left for these last two spots. If we play Kittle, we're not going to have any salary to play anyone else. We'd be over the cap, so I'm going to go ahead and plug in Darren Waller on Yahoo as well at $21. I like the matchup a lot for him against Cleveland. Great game environment, high total. Really all the boxes are checked for him. There's some viable cheap options at tight end. Definitely some cheap plays you could look to here. Like Hunter Henry's only $4,200. Jonnu Smith's only $4,100. If Austin Hooper winds up out again, David Njoku is $3,800. Harrison Bryant's coming off a big game, and he's only $3,200. Like, those are definitely cheap options you could consider at the position. If Mo Alley-Cox winds up out again, Trey Burton's $3,500. But we'll just go ahead and plug in Waller because I like the matchup for him. I like his upside against this Cleveland team that really struggles to defend tight ends. So for our last receiver spot, we got $5,400 left. There's some guys that I think are definitely viable for cash in this price range. Corey Davis, he's been as consistent as it gets. Double-digit DraftKings points in all 4 games this season. Got 10 targets last week, even in a tough matchup against Pittsburgh. Now he gets to face the Bengals. We could definitely go to him. Chase Claypool, I'm kind of off of. Unless Deontay Johnson winds up out, then I think Claypool's definitely viable. But with Deontay Johnson back, I think that does hurt Chase Claypool quite a bit, and we saw that be the case last week. 0.8 DraftKings points, 1 catch for -2 yards. Hard to really trust him with Deontay Johnson, back. Johnson did get hurt, but I'm assuming he's going to play this week. But how about Juju Smith-Schuster, man? $5,400 for Juju. I know he's been really bad, but he got 14 targets last week against Tennessee, which was great to see. 9 catches for 85 yards. He had a huge week 1 against the Giants, 24 DK points. It looked like Juju was going to have, kind of a breakout year, and then he really started to trend down. Really hasn't done much since week 1. But he did get 14 targets last week. He still is, going to be a very high-targeted guy in the Steelers' offense. The Steelers do have a lot of weapons on offense. They have Connor they can hand the ball off to. They still have Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool. I don't think Juju's going to be locked in for double-digit targets every single week, kind of like he was last year. But still, he's one of the better receivers on the Steelers team. He's still their number 1 receiver, in my opinion. I know it's not a good matchup against Baltimore, but $5,400 for Juju, I think, is definitely a reasonable price tag. He's not a guy that I think is a lock and load by any means, but he fits our lineup, and I never mind playing, these talented receivers that are too cheap. Like, Juju's one that stands out as just being a guy that, for his talent, should probably not be $5,400 even against the Ravens. I know T.Y. Hilton has been complete dust this year, but he's only $4,900 against the Lions. I mean, I wouldn't mind playing him. You still have Traquan Smith for $4,700 that you could play, with Michael Thomas most likely being out again. So there's other guys you could look to, but we'll plug in Juju for now as our last guy into this build, which leaves us with $0 remaining, fills out the rest of the lineup. that's a lineup that I do like early on in the week. Just for now, as sort of a placeholder. We got Carr stacked up with Waller, running back with Kareem Hunt. Normally I don't really look to stack in cash games, but at least we got some correlation there. Kamara, Hunt, two guys I'm pretty high on. Allen, I think, is too cheap. Brandon Ayuk should be looking at way more volume this week with no Deebo Samuel, plus a really good matchup. Juju, tough spot, but 5,400 you could argue is too cheap for Juju. DJ Dallas, I think, is going to be a top value play depending on what happens with the Seattle backfield with those injuries, and then Dolphins as a cheap defense. Now to fill out our lineup on Yahoo, we got $14 left. We don't have much salary to work with, but there is a guy that I like down here at $14 that I think is way too cheap. There's a couple guys, honestly, you could go with Traquan Smith if Michael Thomas is out. You could play Rashad Higgins with no Odell Beckham Jr. I think Rashad Higgins definitely gets a boost without Odell. Did get 6 targets last week, 6 catches for 110 yards. But how about Devontae Parker? Just $14 on Yahoo. I know, this isn't the best matchup against the Rams. He is most likely going to be shadowed by Jalen Ramsey. But even in a tough matchup, I don't think Devontae Parker should be this cheap. I mean, this is still the number one receiver for the Dolphins. With Tua coming in at quarterback, is that an upgrade for Parker? Is that a downgrade? I guess we'll have to see, but this is a pretty, not great Miami team. They're going to be most likely playing from behind in this game. They're going to have to throw. $14 for Devontae Parker, I think, is a little bit too cheap of a price tag, even in a tough matchup against Ramsey. So we can go ahead and plug him into our Yahoo lineup to fill out the lineup. If you don't feel confident in Parker, you could always play Higgins or Smith, like I stated earlier. But I like Parker at that cheap price tag, even in the tough matchup. So that's what I'm liking on Yahoo this week. Kind of, it's pretty much very similar to Draftkings, only like a 2v2 difference than the Draftkings build. But yeah, guys, that's what I'm liking early on in the week. Obviously this is not a final lineup. Do not play this lineup. If you play this lineup, I really hope you lose because, I'm not here to give lineups. That's not what I do. But I do like to talk through roster construction, what I look for when I'm building out my lineups. As we get more information throughout the week, I'll be able to break down the slate more in depth, give my more in-depth thoughts in Friday's video. So be sure to check out Friday's video, the full slate breakdown. Check out my video for the Thursday night football game as well. That'll probably be posted on Wednesday sometime in the afternoon. If you're planning to play that showdown slate for Thursday night, be sure to check that video out as well. But I hope you guys did enjoy this one. Hit the like button before you get out of here. Hit the subscribe button as well. Click that notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. And if you would like to check out more content from me, you can do that. Link down below in the description. I do have more content available on Patreon if you are interested. But best of luck this week, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. We'll see you in the next one. Good luck, guys. Peace.